Welcome to the Fallen Rise podcast. Today we're joined with the one and only Devin from MODIFOX. Devin, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey guys, thank you so much for having me on. Like you said, my name is Devin. I'm 29 years old. I'm founder of a sportswear brand called MODIFOX. We're developing hybrid sport shoes. Actually, our first one at this moment. And I'm also, I wouldn't say an athlete, but I'm quite fascinated and obsessed with sports. And I guess what exactly is probably what we're still going to talk about in this episode.
So you mentioned you're the founder of MODIFOX. Can you explain to us where that came from?
Yeah. So where it came from? You mean where the idea came from, or when I started it?
Both. Both.
So yeah. So actually, the first idea, and I have to go back a little bit in time and add a little bit more context, because what we built in the very beginning was not a sports shoe. It was still a hybrid shoe. So let's say a 2-in-1 shoe to make it simple. The first one that we built was a combination of a house shoe and a shoe that you can wear outside. So like a normal everyday sneaker. And the idea for that I had long time ago, probably when I was 14 already. I didn't really have the idea for the product, but I had the pain back then. I grew up on the countryside in a household with 5 people, and whenever there were any daily chores, especially at that age of like 14 years old, you get like more dragged into these daily chores by your parents. And so whenever, for example, I took the trash out or had to go fetch some groceries or something, I always had to switch shoes kind of at the door, because, if you go out and then you come back in with dirty socks, then your mom's going to yell at you. If you go out and you change into your shoes, that's kind of a hassle. And then you have to tie laces and stuff like that. So that always bugged me a little bit. And I thought, why can I not just go out in my normal slippers that I'm wearing inside as well? Because we did have, floor heating, but it never really worked to the great extent. And then I have like chronically cold feet. So that really bugged me back then. And I thought, why can't there be a simpler solution, like something that I can wear indoors and outdoors and don't have to worry about dirt or things like that? And so back then I didn't know what a startup was or founding. I didn't have any aspirations regarding that either. But then later during my studies, I studied international business during my master's, which is just a fancy word for economics, really. And then during that time, I had a course which focused on startups and business modeling. And we were sort of in a group, and somebody had to pitch an idea, and the whole group had to work on it, and nobody had an idea. And I was like, I had this, this pain back then, and I thought, why can't there be something like a house shoe which can just stay clean everywhere? So maybe you have a layer for outside, but you can quickly take it off when you enter inside. And since I'm talking about it, I actually have one over here as well, where I can make it. Sometimes an image says more than I can say in a few words. So the idea is that this is pretty much the shoe that you can wear outside, and it can get dirty from underneath. And when you come inside, obviously you don't want that dirt in your living room, for example. So what you can do is you can just take off the sole, and then you have a clean, barefoot style, more comfortable sole for inside. And I pitched that back then. Obviously, there was no product or something like that. It was just an idea, and people liked it. And so I was like, hey, why is that not something worth looking into? I'm going to work for a long time after my studies anyways, and until I someday go into retirement. So might as well do something fun. And if it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't, I still have my studies to fall back on. So that was pretty much how it started.
Devin, tell us about the name MODIFOX.
And the name is something I have sort of a love-hate relationship with, because we had a different name in the beginning. The name was Elsewhere, but where, written not as in where you're going, but the things you are wearing. So with an EA, right? It was sort of just to say that you can take your shoes elsewhere. It was, I don't know, a word play. Do you call it that way?
Yeah.
And so that's what we had initially. And then we figured a couple of other brands claimed that already in European markets. So we had to change. And I cannot ever really decide on one thing very, very fast. And so we were going through a couple of different names, and we were looking for something that displays sort of the versatility of our products. So back then, I was still in a founding team with a couple of other people, and we're thinking, okay, something has to ring. And then somebody, I think it was even a freelancer that we hired for this job, came up with the name MODIFOX, sort of to combine two things. On the one hand, there's the word in it, modification, which is quite functional and you can get it right away. And the other one is the fox. And what a thing that a lot of people might not know about the fox is that it's one of the most versatile animals on the planet. It pretty much, I think, inhabits every continent on this planet except for Antarctica. And it's one of the very, very few ones to do so. So we thought, okay, this is kind of fitting, with our shoes, you can go across different terrains at ease without a problem. And then we just picked that name, and it helped that the .com domain was still available as well. So we picked that and stuck with it ever since.
So what was the reason for changing from your original idea of a house shoe to a sports shoe? How did that come about?
Yeah, so we developed it for a long, long time because you think when you have a design in mind, you might be able to turn it into reality quite fast. But once you're actually doing it, you figure out, things are actually way tougher. You cannot just tell somebody to, especially with shoes, to make it real, because whenever you're, for example, having a sole, you need, in traditional shoe manufacturing, you need special tooling for that. So in this case, you require an aluminium mold that is quite expensive, and it is quite complicated and complex to build it, first of all. And so that was just a long, long process. And in the beginning, we designed it, I think, in 2022 for the first time. And then in 2023, by the end of the year, in November, we first launched it on Kickstarter. At that time, my founding team fell apart completely. And so I did the Kickstarter on my own. So this launch campaign that we had. And in the end, we had way too little orders in order to go into production, because that's another thing. You needed minimum order quantity in order to go into production. At the time, I had probably 100 to 150 pairs that were pre-ordered. And the factory said, well, this is kind of a joke. We're not doing anything under 1,000 pairs normally. So come back when you have that. And I said, okay, no problem. I still have until March, until I promised these customers to deliver. So until then, probably I can still ramp it up, and I just have to try. The problem was then, in the beginning of the year, it was not really the house shoe season anymore, but I got a tip from a friend of mine who lived on a houseboat in the Netherlands, because that's what people do in the Netherlands. They live on houseboats. And he told me about a friend that he had who is a captain of a super yacht, and about their pain of changing from between the deck, so like a clean area, to the dock where it's more dirty, and then back onto the boat. And there, it's kind of a golden rule that you change shoes all the time, and it's a hassle the more often you do it. And so I thought, okay, this is all I need. I just grabbed one of my samples and entered into that market. I went to a trade fair in Amsterdam, just like the biggest trade fair for marine equipment. And then after that, I went to all of the ports in Europe. So in France, in Italy, in Spain, and I just dock walked. That's kind of a term. If you're walking along the docks, then you're dock walking. And I just talked to all of the boats over there and asked them whether they found it any interesting and if they wanted to maybe place an order. And then we worked with their suppliers, who were a couple of uniform brands and yacht chandlers. This is quite domain specific suppliers of all kinds of things, also uniform. And with them together, we were able to get to this minimum order quantity that I needed in order to even get it into production of 1,000 pairs. So we like kind of started in the house shoe market, but then since it was seasonal and I still had to get more orders in, I switched it up and went into yachting and adjusted the shoe a little bit for that as well. Together with that, we could then actually move into production. And then afterwards, it was summer last year in 2024. Obviously, nobody is really interested in house shoes at that time, especially not one that is more closed and a little bit warmer. Um, and so again, I was thinking, okay, what is it that we can do at the moment? Obviously, we try to have to keep the business alive somehow. And I then heard from a couple of my customers that they used the shoe to go to the gym. And I was very surprised about that because, I mean, you saw the shoe before. It probably didn't strike you as a shoe for any sort of sports. Um, and I asked them why they would do it. And their answer was, well, in summer, I like to travel a little bit lighter. I'm in my shorts and a t-shirt, and I don't necessarily want to carry a backpack all the time. The only reason I do that normally is to carry a pair of shoes with me. And with yours, I can just get into them at home, and I can wear this sole for outside. And once I get to the gym, I can just take off the street sole, and then I have a stable sole to work out and to do some proper lifting in it. I mean, it might not be the best one for that because it was not designed for it, but you can still keep it clean and you don't have to carry your backpack with you. So that was pretty much the idea where I was like, okay, that is amazing because I am into sports anyways already, and I can really relate to that because I'm also going to the gym for quite a few years now. Um, and I thought, okay, if I can combine the startup that I'm trying to build, which is a super hard thing to begin with already, with a passion that I have for sports, then I might just be able to do it for a way longer time and enjoy it way more.
So mentally, how did you overcome those setbacks, like losing your founding team, like being told you don't have enough orders? How did you overcome that?
Um, I I mean, it might surprise you, but it was fairly easy to me because I did not really ever think of failure as an option. It just sounded way too painful for me. I mean, I put so much effort into this already for a couple of years. I missed out on so many other things, on friendships, on hobbies, on spending time with a lot of people that are close to me, also family, and that is just such a big sacrifice that I would just never. If I don't see that there's still something that I could try, at least I will never know if it's going to work out in the end, of course. But if there's always something that I can still try, and I guess I'm quite a creative person in the sense of being able to think of another thing that I still haven't tried yet. So as long as there is something, I will always try that thing out just to know for myself that I have tried everything. I mean, otherwise, um, yeah, giving up it was just never really an option. It obviously always, um, it was always very difficult to go through these times when, for example, you lose a co-founder or I don't know, when things don't go the way you wanted to, when you don't get enough orders and you don't know how to go into production or things like that. Um, yeah, but at the same time, you just find yourself in that situation, and the only way out of it is to. It sounds very cliche, but the only way out of it is to go forward and to think of a way of how to fix it. And then very often you will also find out that, at least is my experience, that there are a lot of worries that are not even real. You only feel them mentally, but they sort of never play out in reality, even though you might expect them to. So yeah, I don't know. I hope I answered this with that.
Of course, of course. Now, in terms of going forward, you heard people using your shoe for going to the gym. It wasn't designed and built for that, but now you have built that shoe that is for the gym and it is for the running. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we when I mean, going back to the story pretty much, when I found out that people used already the house shoe that we built in the very beginning in that sense and carried it with them to the gym and worked out in it, I was thinking, okay, how can we make it, I mean, how can we make it really, really good? Because if you're just building a product that is sort of 1% better than everything else, nobody's going to really care. If you don't have any sort of other mode, like, I don't know, you are a very prominent person or something like that, then nobody's going to really care. So I was thinking of, okay, how can I not just offer a sports shoe that, makes it easier for you to go to the gym and work out and you don't have to carry a backpack with you, but how can I um, offer them even more, because we do have a product that's very versatile. And if you can use it as a shoe to do weightlifting in, maybe you can also use it as a shoe to run, for example, right? That was my idea at the time, because I was thinking, okay, people do two things when they're at the gym. They train strength and they train endurance, right? And so I then thought, if we have a sole already that people are going to wear outside, which is a little bit more chunky, we can also just turn that into a running sole. I did not know at the time how long this process of development would take, and how much more it would drag out our launch date. Um, I don't know if I would have done things differently and made it a little bit easier to start with, but I'm very happy with where we're at now in development. Yeah. If you want to, I can show it once.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So I mean, you've probably seen it once or twice before, but again, very similar to the first one, just a couple of different, materials and fabrics. The sole we did a little bit different. It's even thinner, and it's just more designed for weightlifting. So that is the upper that you can wear at the gym, which is quite lightweight. It's very flexible. It's more so in a barefoot style. We have a slightly bigger toe box than in the shoes that we designed before. And then when you go outside or when you want to hit the treadmill, you can just attach it to a sole that is now, or seemingly probably a little bit bigger than the other one before. It is though quite a bit lighter. And this one, yeah, it's a PU high rebound foam. It's quite a technical term, but it's pretty much a foam that other big brands are using as well in their running soles. Yeah, and so when you just attach it to that, then the shoe that you wear normally for lifting at the gym turns into a shoe that you can also use for running.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite cool. So, Devin, this shoe, a little while ago, you were actually trying to test this shoe on a big run. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah. Yeah, I started doing that last year. I never really fancied running so much. I actually disliked it for a very long time. I played football from, I think, the age of 4 until I was about 15 years old or so. And when I quit, I did it because I didn't like to run anymore. I didn't like the process. But then last year already, that was sort of the spark of why I started with a lot of these things, is that lots of people were questioning whether our technology, the fixation between the upper and the sole, is actually working, and if it's going to work during a longer process of wear and tear on the product as well. And I knew that that was the case, obviously, because I designed the product and I just wore it for a long, long time in the prototypes already on a daily basis. So I knew how it would perform. But obviously, that's very, very subjective. And if you go into factory tests, and you tell people about isolation tests where you put the product in and out of position for about 10,000 times to just project how the wear and tear would be over a couple of years of the product's lifespan, then people will just, they might find it a little bit boring and they cannot really, relate or understand whether that's actually, what they're looking for or not. So I had to make it a little bit more straight and entertaining at the same time, I felt at least. And so I then, whenever I got to this point in a conversation where people were like, "Oh yeah, I don't really know whether I should, it's a nice idea, but does it really hold? I don't know." And it's fair enough, because the product, obviously, people don't really know it. And so I was then at some point just like, "Hey, if I would run a marathon in it, would you then believe me that it's actually working?" And then people liked that idea because it was a little bit funny, and they were like, "Yeah, I want to see you run a marathon. You never ran a marathon before, did you?" And I did not. And so I just said, "Okay, I'm going to do that." And then afterwards you will have proof, and then you can make up your mind whether you think it's interesting or not. And so I did that last year in one marathon in Malta, actually, before we launched the first, or before the first product was delivered, let's say. And that was still with the casual shoe. That was not with the sports shoe. And that was my first marathon, and was a terrible experience. I had a big lack of training. I think I finished in 5 hours and 20 minutes, and I just barely did. I broke down afterwards. And I think I had kind of like a shiver for about 2 hours. I think I was never so exhausted in my life before. And I didn't think I would do it again. But then, there comes the day after the marathon, and you're forgetting the pain, and you're like, "Oh, that wasn't so bad, actually. Maybe I'm going to do something similar very soon again." And then when we now did the sports shoe, I was thinking, okay, you have to do something like that again. There's new people, because obviously the people that bought the first product, the house shoe, are maybe not necessarily the people who are going to buy the sports shoe now. So it's new people again. They will have the same doubts about the product. So you have to prove it. And then I thought in February that maybe I can prove it by the end of March in our first factory prototype of the sports shoe behind me, that we developed during an ultra trail. So I picked the 62-kilometer ultra trail in Madao, and I tried to test it over there. Unfortunately, right before the test, like literally hours before, one machine that we pushed until it's very extreme broke down, and then we could not test it. I still did the ultra trail, but unfortunately the test didn't work out that day.
Yeah. On that ultra trail morale, you were doing the 62-kilometer. I was doing the full 120-kilometer. And I saw that you were taking your shoe, and I saw what you were trying to do on Instagram. And I thought, oh, this guy's quite interesting. I'll see if I meet him out there. And funny enough, I started at 9 p.m. at night, and at about 8 o'clock in the morning, I got to the halfway point and I met you. And then we had a good chat and we ran together, and things sort of developed from there. And then from there, sort of gone back and forth. And we both managed to finish Ultra Trail de Morale. I was doing 101 miles, as you know. And when seeing that, you instantly thought, oh, I'm in Germany, Peter's in the UK. I'll drive 8 hours?
I think, yeah, could have been with the ferry in between. Yeah, I think probably, I don't know exactly anymore, but somewhere between 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah, you drove all the way from Germany to come and support me on the 101-mile run, which we did together in many respects. And then now you're looking to do your own challenge of 50 marathons in 50 days. Do you want to sort of run us through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Right after Ultra Trail de Marau, I mean, where we met, probably we even talked about it while we were still running it. I was very, very devastated from the start, and I really didn't feel like running 62 kilometers now, because just half an hour before, the reality set in of not being able to fulfill my promise and actually test the shoe during that race. and it felt even more devastating just because I told so many people about it before. We had a sponsorship with Ultra Trail de Marau, so we put out a video before. I think 5,000 people or so saw it. And then there were a couple of other participants who I knew from the race as well, who were really looking forward to it. And they were asking me while I was running how the shoes are holding up. And I was like, mate, this is not the shoe. Unfortunately, we didn't make it. I'm very sorry for that. So that was quite tough. But at the time already, I was thinking, okay, you have to make up for this at some point. The fact that you can do it now doesn't mean you can do something possibly even greater next time. And obviously, I was already thinking, okay, the ultra trail. Once I've done that and completed the 62 kilometers, even though it's not about me technically, it's about testing the shoe and seeing whether it's capable of withstanding that. But at the same time, I was thinking, okay, I've announced this already. People have already seen it. I've done it, even though I haven't done it with the shoes. I need to do something that's crazier than this. And at the same time, when you're trying to build a startup, again, there might be other people out there who are either more famous already or who are just better as well, just better in terms of marketing themselves and putting out greater content that, I don't know, people can relate to in a better way. And they might reach a broader audience with that already. I would not call myself an expert on that. I'm still trying very, very hard, but the results are not nearly where they should be in order to be able to compete with the biggest sports brands in the world for eyeballs. So I was thinking, I need to do something outlandish. I need to do something that's crazy enough to get people's attention. Because that's the only way of how I can let people know about it. It's not enough if I hold a shoe into a camera and tell people about it. I need to do something that's worth their attention. So that's why I was then thinking of, hey, what if, I mean, that was a little bit later after the trail, but I was thinking, what if I'm running from my warehouse to the factory, and on the way there, I'm showing people how the product is working, and I can tell them and give them updates every day on whether it's holding up or not in a very honest, transparent way. What the problems might be, if there's something that we still need to fix. And then for as long as I'm running, I can still tell the factory, and we can still, develop next versions and refine everything based on the feedback that I'm giving them. And then as soon as I'm there, everything that we have collected until then in terms of pre-orders, we can then just put right into production. So that was my idea that I had. And then soon after, I found out that this is actually a very, very far distance of over 2,000 kilometers, depending on which route you're taking. And then only I realized, okay, this is going to take me a while. If it's not taking me a while in terms of like many, many months, then I have to run for a long, long distance every day, which is something that I am not used to. And so I thought about what is the maximum distance that I think I could run in a day. And I was like, okay, that's probably a marathon, because I have only done one official marathon so far. And that already felt terrible. So I think if I stretch that out over a day, I'll be all right. But then again, since if I'm running a marathon every day, I still need 50 days to cover that distance. I don't know how I'm going to feel on day 3, day 5. And so I don't think I can push it even more. But this is something that I think is a crazy idea. B, I guess it's possible for me to do it, but I'm not really sure. So it's kind of a 50-50 thing, which is also part of the reason why I called it Project 50-50. It's not just 50 marathons in 50 days, but there's, in my opinion, also just a 50% chance that I can do it and that the shoe can do it. And so, yeah, that was the idea.
Mentally, how are you preparing for this Project 50 and 50?
Um, I don't know. Is there mental preparation that, because I've heard that term before from other athletes, that you should do mental preparation. But I've never done that before. I've never really. I don't know what it is exactly. To be honest, maybe you can enlighten me.
I mean, I suppose from some of the things I've done, obviously 101 miles and various different bits, the mental prep is acknowledging to yourself that what you're going to do is essentially torturous. It's going to be absolutely horrific, and just preparing yourself for that. That's probably the best way of explaining it, because you've got the physical side of preparation, which you're doing at the moment. You're doing all your runs, you're doing all your recovery, you're staying consistent. But what you have to understand is that you're doing 50 marathons in 50 days. That is immense. That is crazy. And I'd highly recommend you get yourself in a mental state where you know that you will push yourself, and you know that you can take that pain. Because let's say you've done 20 marathons, right? You've got another 30 to go. Every single day, it's relentless. So that's what you've got to sit down and just understand what you're about to do and accept that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
But that's probably the way how I should do it. That's probably the way how anyone should do it when you approach something like that. And I think the physical preparation that you're doing, at least now for this, that I'm already now, at least this week for the first time, I'm running half a marathon every day. Not quite exactly. It's 20 kilometers, not 21. So it's about 140 kilometers this week. That is, in my opinion, as much physical as it is mental, because the physical effort is one thing, but at the same time, if you're running for so long, it's about 2 hours, sometimes more, that I'm doing every morning. It also can just get quite boring, and I think that is the real mental challenge. One mental challenge is, of course, if it's painful to keep on pushing through, that is something different. But just to be able to deal with the boredom and the I don't know, the just consistent effort, or the consistent feeling of slight discomfort that keeps adding up over time. Um, I feel like that is a little bit mental training already. And in terms of what it will actually feel like to run 50 marathons in 50 days, I think I cannot ever imagine that until I have done it. I don't even know yet how it feels to run 2 marathons in 2 days, to be honest. So let alone 50 and 50. And I just take it as an adventure. And I also take it as the only route to success. So I think if I wouldn't have put out a statement before, for example, right, like an announcement video where I would say I'm absolutely doing this, and if my business and the objectives that I pursue with it would not completely depend on it, which they do, then I might be a little bit more concerned that maybe I will get, uh, mental struggles way earlier in that project that I might not be able to overcome. But I think it helps if you're backing yourself in a corner and you have only one way out, and sort of everything, your whole life depends on it. Of course, it's not a life and death situation, but a lot of things that are very dear to me depend on it. And so far in the past, that has always made things a little bit easier for myself in terms of just pushing on. And I hope it will help me in this project as well.
Absolutely. One of our previous guests said to us, you've got to focus on the kilometer you're in and the marathon you're in. So that advice could be really beneficial to you when those days become like struggles. You just focus on that kilometer you're in, and you'll be able to keep pushing. What would you say is the goal of these 50-50 projects for your business?
Well, it is sort of the launch campaign, if you will, right? I've developed this product now for quite some time, and it's a small startup. I'm literally the only person working in it. Yes, I have a lot of people around me who are helping me um, more than I can ever pay them back. But essentially, I'm the only person working full time in it. And so I don't have a lot of resources except for my own time. Um, and so I cannot invest, for example, heavily into advertising and just get as much exposure as I need in order to collect as many orders as I need to go into production. I have to get eyeballs in a different way, right? Which is, again, what we talked about before, which is why I'm doing this project. And so I am trying during that time to collect 1,000 pre-orders for the shoe until I hit Portugal, until I hit the warehouse. Until I hit the factory, um, in order to then go into production right after. That's the goal. And
So
obviously, before that, I mean, it's easier said. That is one thing that is easier said than done. But before that, I still have to get there, and the shoe has to get there because the samples, they have been tested a little bit before, but nothing that compares to what I'm trying to push them through with this. And it is absolutely, completely uncertain and more than unlikely that they will actually make it until the factory. So that is number one goal, right? That I'm making it there in one piece and that the shoes can make it there in one piece. And then during that time to convince as many people as possible that the shoe is actually durable enough for sports and performant enough that they're willing to test it out and give it a shot.
How are you going to manage the shoes on the run with the soles? Are you going to swap the soles out, or how is that working?
Yeah, so normally if you have a pair of running shoes, I mean, Peter, you're heavily into running. Jonah, you're now into running, I guess, as well, and you know it from your dad, I guess. After, I mean, I don't know what it is in miles, probably after 300 miles. In Germany, we say after about 500 kilometers, you should change your running shoes. That's sort of like a rule of thumb that has been there for quite some time, because over time you have a lot of wear and tear on the product. The foam underneath can lose its rebound. You're pressing your footprint over time into the shoe very heavily, and then everybody has their own running style as well, right? So you have a lot of pressure maybe on your left ankle, but a little bit less on your right ankle. And then the shoe kind of has to adjust to that because it's exposed to that pressure for a long time. And so what people then normally do is after 500 kilometers, they throw away their old pair and they're getting a new one. And what we can do with ours, and I can even show it maybe a little bit more easily with a different color, is when this one is worn through, right? Let's say this one is worn for 500 kilometers and I made it through the first couple of days with that one successfully, but the sole has worn out. Then what I can do is I can just swap out the sole for a different one. And then with the new one, I'm good to go for the next 500 kilometers, which is what I'm trying to do, right? During the project after 500K, I'll switch it for a different one. And then I think in total, depending on the route that I'm taking, whether it's going to be 2,100 kilometers, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, I think I will go through a sole rotation of about 5 pairs.
Wow. So it's also more sustainable because you won't have to buy a new shoe each time. Is that part of why you're doing it?
Yeah, it's part of it. For me, it's a big part of it, right? Because it's one reason, maybe not why I started it. I had this personal pain and that I wanted to fix and that was probably very egoistic, and that's why I started the business. But what kept me going in a lot of situations was that this is better for the environment and for humanity overall, if you will. Because essentially what I'm doing with the whole concept is I'm taking a lot of different products and I break it down into smaller parts or into fewer parts. So essentially, instead of owning many different shoes, you can also just own a single pair that can do many different things. Yeah, and that is better per se, you could say, but at the same time, um, depending on what's trending at the moment and whether people think they need to care about more about the environment at the moment or not, it might be a little bit easier to sell a product that way, but it's never the primary benefit of a product. At least that's what I'm thinking, that the first and primary benefit has to be something that means something personally to you, that is not just a collective value, but it is something that is fixing an issue that you have in your own life. And then, the sustainable benefit is sort of just a nice to have on top for you as a
100%.
consumer. For me as a founder, it's a big, big motivation.
100%. And in terms of personal touches on your shoes, when you came to England to support me on my 101-mile run, you brought me a pair of MODIFOX shoes. And not only did you bring me the shoes, you had them engraved for me, which is, of course, absolutely amazing. So thank you again for that. They're treasured very much. That was the older pair. So hopefully I get my hands on a new pair soon. But my question for you is, you're doing 50 marathons in 50 days. You're going from Germany all the way to Portugal. Logistically, how are you doing this? Do you have a support crew? Do you have people coming with you? Where are you staying each night? How are you managing to do this?
Yeah. I don't, I mean, obviously I have all these questions, for some time now, since I had the idea first, and I've been trying to answer them as good as I can. But with some things, it's taken a little bit longer. So the main idea is that I'm not going alone, because it might be possible to do it. And in the very worst case, if nobody else is willing to, or able to accompany me for that trip, then I think I would still do it on my own. The problem then is, obviously, it's not just the goal of me running down there. It's not my own personal goal. I do it in order to test the product, and testing the product is one part of it. But at the same time, obviously, I have to tell people about it. And to tell people about it, you need to have certain footage. You need to be able to produce photos and videos on a very, very frequent basis in a good quality from different angles. And these different angles are very, very hard to get when you're running on your own, and you have to shoot the content yourself as well. It is possible in, I think, a way which might not be up to the standards that some people would be expecting, but it is definitely not very feasible, especially when you're doing that project for the first time and when you're not the most seasoned ultra runner ever, which I am not by any means. So I'm trying to have a partner in crime, if you will, with me on that project, who is doing a lot of things. And actually, funny enough, and completely true story, I found out the most about what I actually need in one of your episodes that you had with, I think Stan is his name, right? Who is the videographer of, or who was the videographer of the Hardest Geezer when he did his Africa run. And so I'm looking for a person like him, pretty much. And I've been talking to a couple of people already, and I might actually have somebody who we're sort of figuring out the last details at the moment. But if he's on board, that would be huge, because he's not only one who can endure pain, because I think it's the same for him. He's going to have days that are as long or maybe even longer as my own days, as Stan already told on your episode, right? For me, it's one thing to do the run, but for the guy who is with me, he has to drive a van because that's what we're needing in order to get down there. He needs to run bits with me or be on a bicycle next to me in order to film me. He has to worry about our nutrition. He has to worry about which route we're going to take the next day and fix all sorts of problems that come up along the way that we cannot even think of right now. So that's a very, very, very tough job. And the guy that I hope I can do it with right now, actually before a couple of years ago already cycled all the way from Cologne, Germany, down to, I think it is in the north of Portugal somewhere. And he picked a route which was over 3,500 kilometers, where he first went down to Italy and then did the whole Côte d'Azur in France, and then went through Spain and then eventually through Portugal. So it's not just that he knows how to work. At the same time, he has also just done such a project before, and he knows how these days should be structured and what to do and what not to do and what to look out for. So I hope that I'm with that guy. If that's the case, then I think I'm in very good hands.
Wow. So, Devin, we ask all of our guests 3 questions. Our first one is, who inspired you to do what you do?
I mean, I heard the questions before already on one of your episodes, on your other episodes, and I this morning when I was running, I was trying to think of a smart answer, but I didn't get to one yet. Who inspired me? I think if anybody, it would be from my closer family, like my brother, for example. He owns a startup by himself, and he's 2 years my elder, and so he has done a lot of things a couple of months or years in advance before I had to do them, and he had faced challenges before I had to face them. So he was always a big role model for me to look up to, because well, he's quite successful with what he's doing, and so he could point me into a couple of directions, or whenever I don't know, felt a certain way and I didn't feel like anybody could understand me, because it can be a very lonely place to be a solo founder, and having to deal with all sorts of things and not really knowing what to do first, and then having a person like him, who I know very, very well, and who I know can understand me as well from a business perspective, because he has walked that path. That is very helpful. But in terms of real inspiration to start this, or to keep doing it, I don't know. There's probably not many. There's other people who I sometimes follow a little bit, and who maybe fuel my fire a little bit. But I think if you're paying too much attention to what others are doing, you can subconsciously try and replicate what they're doing a little bit too much, or copy what they're doing. And I think that is never a good thing, because you're walking your own path, and yes, other people might have done something similar before, but you can never fix your own problems, or you can never fix them in the very, very same way as other people have fixed other problems before. And so I'm trying to not look too much at what other people are doing, or at least I'm trying to not copy what they're doing, and listen to myself and to my gut feeling.
Nice. Our second question is, if your younger self could see you now, what would they say?
I don't know. You'd have to ask my younger self. Um,
Devin answer.
I don't know. I think I think my younger self would probably not have thought that I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Um, I think he would probably be slightly impressed because when I was growing up, um, I wasn't good at anything in particular. I was not really bad at anything either, and I didn't grow up in a very tough way or so. I grew up in a great family with loving and caring parents, great siblings, good situation overall. I had a lot of friends in school. Everything was all right. But I just was never really good at anything in particular, and so I don't know. I felt a little bit without purpose. So I think my younger self uh, would be glad that I at least found something that I would call a purpose right now. Probably slightly disappointed that it has taken so long, and that you know maybe maybe by the standards of other people, I'm not as successful yet as I should be or so. But I think overall it would be content. I'd hope so.
I mean, comparison is the thief of joy, and everyone's on their own journey. So, like you do already, don't compare yourself too much. But Devin, the third question we have for you is a message to anyone who's listening.
Um, um, a message to anybody who's listening. In terms of, uh, any type of advice that I should be giving them
And
for what they're doing, or
anything you want to say to anyone who's listening, whatever that is.
well, and if you're trying to do something, because I think that's I'm always very cautious in terms of giving people advice on anything, because I'm I'm not an expert at much, the only thing that I might be slightly of an expert in is having challenges in front of you that you don't really know how to overcome them yet. And then sort of doing it anyways, and sometimes coming out on top, and sometimes, falling short as well. So I guess um, when you really want something, then you should at least try and attempt and do it, because you can really not fall that far. I mean, all the worries that people have in terms of what could happen or might happen if they try something and it won't work, and how fast they give up, or how fast somebody comes up with an excuse um, in order to say, hey, this didn't work out because of ABC. Um, I think that's not necessary, and I think it's completely understandable, because everybody has fears, and I have these fears as well, but they rarely turn out in reality as you expect them to be. They rarely turn out as bad, and so I think trying something, there's just a lot of satisfaction that comes from it, and overall, I don't know. I just think that anybody in the world is way more capable of doing way more things than they can even imagine. So go for it. It's probably a very cliche statement, and a lot of people have said that in a lot of smarter ways before. But yeah, that would be my take.
Well, Devin, obviously all the best. I'm sure it's going to be absolutely amazing to watch. And thanks for coming on.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.